15 years developing and promoting a unique approach in human growth that involves a so-called systemic intelligence, which he believes will grow stronger in the very next future. He published 2 books with a major Italian publisher, one on corporate growth and one on self-esteem, both in Italian, and will soon be publishing his first book in English called Systemic Leadership. He's an active executive contributor for Brains magazine, one of the most important online magazines dedicated to human growth, read by 300,000 people all over the world. His session today is about achieving interdependence. Thank you so much, Alessandro, to be here with us today. And without further delay, I will say to you, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Fatima, and for your presentation. And can you hear me all? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
Yes.
very well.
Visible, audible.
Okay. So, yes, the topic of today is achieving it's the topic of interdependence. And before I get into that, however, I would like to, because it does have some kind of connection, I would like to spend just very few minutes on an aspect of the intelligences that we have been using so far, because this is very much connected to the 3 stages of, let's say, human evolution, which is dependence, independence, and interdependence. So it all starts from the very first type of intelligence. Okay, there are dozens of intelligences that are being used, but they can all be somehow related to one of these 3. And for example, mechanistic intelligence is a type of intelligence that we use by default since we're born, since the dawn of humanity. It's what we've been using so far for work, for doing whatever we have to do in order to relate in a positive way, and in, I would even say, in an opportunistic way with the reality we live in. So intelligence is the capacity to relate ourselves with the manifested world. In other words, whatever we see, whatever we touch, whatever we can relate physically with the world, that is called mechanistic intelligence. So this is very important that we keep this in mind, because this is what we have been using from the very beginning until now. This is still very strong. It's by far the strongest type of intelligence that we use when we go to school, when we go to work. This is the intelligence that we use. Then, however, that in the past, let's say, few decades, people understood that this type of intelligence was not enough anymore. So that's where emotional intelligence has come around. And they were saying that, okay, sure, mechanistic intelligence doesn't die, we still need that. But in order to be more efficient, more effective in this new reality that has been developing, where relationships were growing much tighter, and the old mechanistic intelligence was no longer capable of solving, new problems that were coming up, we needed to develop this type of intelligence, and which is about being proficient in our relationships with ourselves, with others, and with events. And now something new is coming up, which is also very important. It's still not felt, which is systemic intelligence, which is a proficient relationship with the unseen world. What does that mean? That whereas the mechanistic intelligence has to do with what we can see, what we can directly relate to through our 5 senses, systemic intelligence is more focused on the things that we don't see. In other words, all the forces, all the dynamics that are going on beneath what we see. And this is because systems work in a very specific way. For example, if we talk about artificial systems, let's see what artificial systems are. Artificial systems are structures that are conceived, designed, and built by man, made up of elements and or components connected between them in an integrated way in order to carry out a task that is finalized to the attainment of a specific desired result. Okay, so that means the PC or the smartphone that you're using to see this, to watch this seminar, for example, this session, is an artificial system. Why? Because it's made of components that are built one on the other so that they can produce a result, which is that of being able to follow this session. There we are. Then we have a natural system. It's a structure that established and perfected itself spontaneously thanks to an evolutionary process and made of elements that are connected between them in an integrated and interdependent way in order to pursue a superior purpose. So a natural system, that's us, that's nature, that's all that has not been created by man, pursues a purpose. What has been created by man is made in order to achieve a result. And so they're different in the way that whereas artificial systems have components that are integrated, in other words, they're put together and connected together so that they can produce that result, a natural system is integrated in an interdependent way. What does that mean? That every piece, every single element and component of a natural system is totally 100% related to all the other components. For example, in an artificial system, if a component burns, all I have to do is just to change the component. I take the one that has been damaged, I put a new one, and the artificial system just goes on by itself as it was. No problem whatsoever. Whereas natural system, you cannot say that. For example, if you have a toothache, an aching toothache, a really bad toothache, and you say, how are you? What are you going to say? Oh, I'm great. I've just got this toothache, but for the rest, I'm just great. Let's go dance. I don't see that happening, because in that pain, in that damage, let's say, to your tooth, your entire organism is involved. That happens to all systems. And the problem is that our societies, our world right now is an artificial system, is built and followed as an artificial system. Why? Because of our egoistic, because what we do is we always do it not to pursue a purpose, but to pursue results. We want results. That's the problem. And that's where all our problems come from. Now, why can't the world go on like this? It has gone on for so far like this, so why can't it go on? Because we are way more interconnected. I mean, it's just imagine 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I'm here in Italy. Some of you are much more, I'm in Europe. Some of you are in the States, in India, or in Africa, or Middle East, whatever. And let's say 30 years ago, you heard about a war that was waged between Russia and Ukraine. People said, who cares? It's their problem. I mean, it doesn't concern me. And it didn't, really, actually, it really didn't. Today, even if you're in Timbuktu, somewhere in, I don't know, with the Aborigines in Australia, you are involved. That's because we are much more interconnected. So the old way of looking and designing systems and societies and organizations in an artificial way cannot work anymore. We need to understand how natural systems work and go by them. So there are only three things that exist in nature, and that's all that really exists, actually, which are laws, forces, and dynamics. These are the only three things that exist. Laws are the pillars of our nature. When I say nature, by the way, I mean reality. So reality, nature, systems, creation, whatever you want to call it, it's all in the same, and there are different ways to say the same thing. And all of these are sustained, they're supported by laws. Without the laws, everything would crumble. There wouldn't be anything. Nothing could exist without laws. Forces are anything that cause a reaction. And they can be physical forces, they can be emotional forces, or they can be mental forces, or, for example, a thought is a force. An emotion is a force because it makes you do things, right? You have a thought and you want to do things as a result of that thought. You have an action, which is physical, and that is also a force. And all these forces translate into dynamics. In other words, they put into action some dynamics, which then produce whatever happens in our reality. So what we see, like, for example, you see me right now through this PC, you go back to your family, you go to your work, you go to a restaurant, and you see and you interact according to what you see with your five senses. But in fact, all we are doing is being controlled by these forces, by these dynamics that have to be in some way be supported by laws. So this is everything that exists. This is what systemic intelligence really delves in, about understanding how these forces work, how these dynamics work. As I said, 30 years ago, this was not a problem. Today it is, and it will be more so as we go on. This is why it's so important to understand this trio that you see here. So the quality, which is something desirable or undesirable, actually, of the dynamics generated by certain forces depends on the extent to which such forces are aligned or not with the laws of nature. Laws of nature, like, for example, law of gravity, of magnetism, but these are not the only laws that exist. And I'm not talking only about physical or chemical or any kind of laws. There are mental laws, there are spiritual laws that are at work. And because this reality, this matrix, if you want to call it in another way, is sustained, is supported by, let's say, its print, let's call it that way. Its print is according to love. Now, let's not confuse love with the feeling of love. There are two different things. I don't want to get into that now. I don't want to make that distinction. It would take a session just on that. But if, for example, the forces that I apply are not in alignment with the laws of nature, and therefore the dynamics that result from these forces will not be aligned with the laws of nature, we will have what we call undesirable events or desirable events. I mean, I don't know anybody who doesn't react positively to love. Perhaps they may be afraid of love. They want to, keep it away. They don't want to have anything to do with love because they have been betrayed, because they have been hurt. But that doesn't mean they don't want it. We all do. Okay, we all react badly to anger. We all react badly to hate, to cheating, to all these things, because all these actions, all these forces create dynamics that are not in alignment with the laws of nature. And so we say, I don't like this. I don't want this. So it's not a question of taste, of personal taste. It's just a question that the laws of nature decide what's good and what's not good for us. And we depend on that and we behave accordingly. So this is a famous sentence about leadership that I've seen many years ago by Harry Kissinger, and I've adopted fully. The task of the leader is to get his people from where they are to where they have not been. So this is a catch. If you want to be a leader and you want to take people from point A to point B, because that's what this definition says, you have a catch here. The leader either has to be already in point B, or he has a very precise map on how to take these people to point B. This is very simple. Otherwise, nobody can lead. So let's see the three stages, and here I'm getting into this question of interdependence and the stages of humanity's growth. So the state of dependence is a state where, for example, humanity felt that it was under the control of powerful outer forces, nature, God, ruling classes, This is the state of the enemy is out there syndrome. Okay, in this situation where I don't have any control because outer forces have all the control over me, everything can be an enemy. So I have to watch out. I have to defend myself somehow. And so I'm in a constant search of having some kind of control. And because I cannot have control, then I have mistrust. I don't trust things very easily because I don't feel in control. I'm dependent on these outer forces. So we are in a condition of ignorance and submissiveness. There were strong feelings of powerlessness, settling for little. I don't need much. All I need in order to survive, only I need to get, to put breakfast and dinner meat. Having needs satisfied. That's what people were looking for, a very weak ego. This is a very important aspect. The ego was very weak. In other words, it's just like we were a little more than animals, but, animals don't have many expectations. All they need is to sleep, to drink, to survive, to eat, whatever. They don't need much more. And that was the state of humanity in the past. The main goal was simply to survive, and the focus was expecting to be led and taken care of. Now, this doesn't mean that the leader here was in another state, but because here the physical aspect, I'm stronger, I can impose myself, and I can tell people what they have to do, and I know they will do it otherwise I will punish them. That was the kind of leadership then, right? But it doesn't mean that he was in a state other than dependence. And he could lead, and people would accept his leadership if he was strong enough to guarantee their survival. That's how leadership worked. Then, during, let's say after the Renaissance, now here I'm talking about his growth in the Western world. Not necessarily the same things happen in all of the world, but this is what happened in the Western world, but similar things, because these passages cannot be changed. Wherever you are in the world, these passages are an obligatory step. But let's say that back in the Middle Ages, in the Renaissance, and then later on, say 17th, 18th century, people started to say, hey, wait a second. We know a lot more today than we knew back in the old ages, let's say in the Middle Ages. So this is a state where humanity started to feel that it had some control and that it had the right and duty to express it. This is the state of the enemy is within me. In other words, if I am not independent, if I cannot have what I want, there's something inside of me that I have to fix. So it's not like the other one, which is the enemy is outside. Then here is when was the birth of science. The greatest scientists, those that have built science, were born in and operated, say, the 17th, 18th century with the age of enlightenment. A growing awareness of being more in control. Rise of democracy. This is, American independence, 18th century, French Revolution, 18th century, Russian Revolution, 20th century. It all came after, this age where humanity as a whole started to feel, hey, I can do a lot more. We have more control than what we think we have. And I want more. I don't settle for little. I desire to fully express my potential, our potential as humanity. Here you have a rapidly growing ego. And the main goal is to thrive, not just to survive. I want more. And the main focus is self-management. Finally, interdependence. This is a stage that still has to be realized, where humanity becomes increasingly aware that its full potential can only be achieved as a result of much stronger interconnection between all people. This is a state of there are no enemies. There are just dynamics and forces that we have to know, that we have to deal with, and that we have to manage. Achieving a balanced connection with nature, which means other people, and reality as a whole. Stronger desire of abundance, wanting more for all, not just for myself. Assuming full control and power, balanced ego. In other words, the ego will grow a lot, and then it will find a balance eventually. Otherwise, interdependence cannot be achieved. Main goal is to share, And main focus is collective growth. So not my growth, but everybody's growth. You see, interdependence means that the whole world is a single organism. That's what it means. So let's see the stage of personal growth. Dependence is a state of a child who feels helpless and needy of the possible attention and care from significant adults. They can do anything on their own. They need somebody to help them. Now, this is not just a state that is limited or is related to age, because about 80–90% of the people live and die in this position today, not yesterday, today. They still live in this position. They choose security over freedom any day. Just give them a loaf of bread and they will give up on freedom any day. Low level of control, influence, and direction. Pursues material, physical well-being. You know, I want to be well with my health. I want money. I want comfort. This is what people in this stage desire, which we see normally. Opportunistic thinking. What's good for me is good for everybody, to say it very bluntly. Totally owned by their ego. Their ego is in total control of them. They have no willpower whatsoever. The main giveaway is blame. What do I mean by that? There may be people that are strong, like I said before, right? You know, strong leaders. I know what I want. I know, and I can achieve it, and they do, perhaps. Okay. But when you hear these people blaming somebody or something, you know they're stuck in dependence. Because blaming, it means I don't have control. Somebody else or somebody else has control, not me. That means that I'm in a state of dependence, actually. Because if it were not for this, we would say, no, there are more than like 10 or 20% of people that are in a state of independence. But like I said, I've seen very strong people in high position blaming. That means they're in a state of dependence. Operating intelligence is mechanistic. I want results. This is what I want. And this is what our ego wants. Because our ego is there, is a software, is a program that is there to guarantee our survival. That's all it is. It's a program that life has given us. No creature, even a blade of grass has its own ego that tells the grass how to grow, how long, where they have to go towards the sun and like dive their roots down in the ground so they can take all the nutrients from the ground. The ego tells everything to any living creature, even vegetable beings. Independence, this is the state of an adolescent who feels the need to detach himself from his significant adults and lead his own life. Roughly 8 to 9% live and die in this position. Okay, now I'm not talking about adolescent. I'm talking about 40, 50-year-old people who do achieve the state, let's say, of adolescence. And they say, I want more. I want to be in control of my life. It chooses freedom over security any day. Fair level of control, influence, and direction, pursues emotional and mental well-being. He wants to feel well and he wants to think well. He doesn't want to have anxiety. He doesn't want to have to count on anybody. Here is where you start having leadership thinking, dealing with strong egoistic forces. Now, egoism is very poorly interpreted because egoism is a very positive force until we are able to control it. Because otherwise, if we don't grow egoistically, we don't want more. If we don't want more, we can contribute. So there can never be interdependence if we don't grow with a strong egoistic force and influence. But we have to know how to deal with it. Here, the main giveaway is self-centeredness. People in this position tend to be self-centered. Why? Because their ego is strong. So they will tend to be very self-centered. Everything turns around me, and this is how you can tell when a person is in a position of independence. Here is emotional intelligence. Now, many of you, we have talked a lot about emotional intelligence. I want to get this straight. Emotional intelligence is extremely important to make people grow. As a matter of fact, we as coaches are here, we exist so that we can help people make the transition between dependence and independence. That's what we're doing today. We tell people, or we help people to have become stronger, to be more confident, to love themselves more. These are all very strong egoistic desires, but they're healthy desires for now. For now. Now we have to be able to control them. I stress on this. And interdependence, which really very few people are here, the state of an adult who is aware that he will obtain far better results if he interacts with others on a win-win relationship and actually operates that way. Perhaps 1-2% of people live and die in this position today. Lives in a state of total freedom, full control, influence, and direction, connection, and spiritual well-being. That's what he cares for. Holistic thinking. He doesn't just think as a leadership, but he sees the overall picture of things because he sees himself integrated in a greater organism. Managing strong altruistic forces. So no longer egoistic forces, which help this person become interdependent. And the main giveaway is focus on others, and the operating intelligence is systemic because you need to understand the dynamics of nature, the dynamics of system. If you don't know these things, with great difficulty, you can become interdependent. This is what we're starting to work on now. And I think that coaches must start to know more about systemic intelligence and how to help people make the transition between independence and interdependence. We have a lot of work now to get people from dependence to interdependence, okay? This is our main work. There's a lot of them. But eventually we will have to lead people also to this third stage. We must go through all the stages. One can go from a state of dependence to one of interdependence. We must all go through independence. Okay, so there's no way we can get from dependence to interdependence. Why? Because we have to grow. We can't go in a state of interdependence from a position of weakness. We have to reach into interdependence from a position of strength. Okay, so this is the last slide. I went as fast as I could. Why we need to achieve interdependence? Its pursuit facilitates our growth and our capacity to contribute, which is our ultimate goal. It humbles us in the process. See, it's not having achieved interdependence that's important, but it's a transition, it's the work that has to be done to get there. This is what counts. When we get to interdependence, we don't need rules anymore. We know exactly what to do. It causes us to use an indirect type of control. It strengthens our influence and it makes our direction far sharper and more inspiring. So what does it mean indirect? I don't control things. I don't control people. I abide by the laws of nature, by the forces that are aligned with the laws of nature, and nature does all the work for me. So that's why it's indirect. I don't have to work on making things happen. All I have to do is be aligned in my decisions, in my actions, in my thoughts, and my emotions with the laws of nature. It aligns us with nature. It's a state where our potential can grow most and be expressed at its fullest. It makes our leadership far more credible and effective until the day when leadership will no longer be required. We will need leadership until all people will be in this state of interdependence. But as I said, once we get here, we will no longer need it. There won't be any more need for a leader because we will all be leaders and followers at the same time, interacting with each other at the same level. Wow, I went fast. I'm sorry for this. So if you have questions.
So Sylvia, you are welcome.
Yes, I have a question to Alessandro. What's the difference between interdependency and codependency?
Codependency is a mutual dependency. So both people, or more than one people, are on the same level of dependence. For example, a husband and wife, right? So the one leaning on another. Okay, so there's no leadership there. There's nothing. There's just dragging along. So there's nothing there. interdependence is, as the word says, it is dependence, okay? But it's mutual, which means that in order to get there, to get to a stage of interdependence, you have to go through independence. And when people grow, once you have grown, you can never go back. Like Einstein said, once your brain has increased, has become stronger, there is no way it can go back to its former shape or form. And the same here, you will never be able to go back to dependence when you're at a stage of interdependence. The only difference is that we're not leaning on each other, we are counting on each other, which is different. So I know that I can count on you, for example, Sylvia, because you've made your own growth, your own progress and everything. Let's say we can go in a partnership together, and because I trust you, you trust me. I know what I'm doing. I know you know what you're doing, and so we can connect. That's interdependence. Codependence goes nowhere. It's just two people that are just have a long way to go. That's all. Eventually, everybody will get to a stage of interdependence. Everybody. All of humanity, that's our destiny. It'll be in 20 years, 100 years, next week, that I don't know. I doubt next week. I have a little doubt about next week.
Okay, because I think there's a main point in all the topics we are treating here is when you speak about love, you speak about codependency in a manner. It's a misunderstood of love. But I believe interdependency is more objective for understanding a relationship.
Here we would have to, we would have to say a lot about love. Love is, when we refer to love, we refer to the feeling of love, of an emotion of love. Love at another level, it's an intention. In other words, I can hate you, Sylvia. I really can't stand your guts. But that's not true, by the way. But I will do whatever I can to benefit you.
Okay.
Because I understand the importance of this connection. Even though I don't like you, I don't hate you, I don't want to have anything to do with you. That's love, because it's an intention. And interdependence starts from an intention of being connected, of being all connected. However, what happens is that initially I may not like you. But when I start working to benefit you, because there is a relationship, it is fatal that sooner or later, I will love you even from an emotional point of view. Because when we connect at a level of intention, at a level of thought, the emotions have to follow. It's a biological process.
Okay, if I understand, in codependency, then you go a step back and depend on the other person as a child. It's like an addict. Both
Yes,
persons
exactly.
are addicts to the other
Please
one.
help me, please, I need you. They may not say that out loud. They may even shout at each other, but that's what their
Okay.
heart says.
Okay, so you believe humanity needs, for facing the future, more interdependency as people, as countries, as
Let's say
economies?
that okay, for now, we need more people that transition from dependence to independence. That's what we need now. And that's what we coach are doing now. We're helping making them this transition. Eventually, we'll get to interdependence. Once humanity gets to interdependence, we won't need any of this. We will know exactly how to relate to each other naturally.
Oh my God, how long does it take?
Well, it depends on us. It may take a war. It may take a war to make us understand that we need each other, but eventually we will get there. When depends on us. How how much resistance we oppose to the process.
Perhaps we need to start in the inner interdependency from our inner sides, so we can make that relation with others. Thank you very much, Alessandro.
Right.